Alright, so this is my walkthrough for doing my unit testing. Um, I did use the same type of testing framework that I did last time I took the class. I used JUnit. I'm using 4.12, and really all I had to do to implement that was in my course section. I just had to add some dependencies. So I'm adding my JUnit, and I did try again to use Makoto, which I think I was a little bit more successful at. And then in the core setup of my game is where I add my folder for where I'm holding my tests, which you can see here. So inside the core folder right here is also where I have my tests. Okay, so to show the test, if I go to the player tests and I run them all, I have 10 failed. So let's show me fixing them. Okay, so for the first one, I want to make sure that I'm getting the current state is returning correctly. This is all from my player class. So I tried to implement various things in here that I thought would actually be functional. So since I'm using kind of a set of states for the player to determine if he's moving for animations, for if he's moving north, south, east, or west, as well as for how he's drawing the sword and swinging in the play screen. It's all based on having the correct states show up. A lot of this testing seemed pretty difficult to try to implement, as I don't have these tied in individual type methods. I have it all in an update method. So I couldn't just test like keys and things. Okay, so in my player class though, the first one, I'm testing that I can return the correct state. So I'm doing a new instance of a player. I'm setting the state using that function so I can test if that works. And my expected is that I should get south back on this one because I'm having it fail on purpose. And then I'm testing against what the getter for getting the current state. So if I change one of these to the same thing, so if I do south and run that, I get a pass on that one. All right, so the next one, next function that I have is here. I have a method for getting the correct reference angles. This is so I can draw a revolute joint for the sword collision box that will get created for the player as he's swinging, and it depends on the direction that he's actually facing. So I needed angles that needed to be consistently generated to have him swing the sword correctly. So where he starts and where he stops, and then I can actually detect for destroying that body once it's finished its swing. So I needed these angles. So in my player tests, the first one I show is for it to actually fail. So my current state, when I call the reference angle, it should from my method call the angle that I have associated with it, and it's failing because since I'm doing south, I'm I need to be calling the correct one. So oh, because it's supposed to fail, so it's actually correct right there. That's why. So if I did this as north, now it passes, so it shows me that it is not returning correctly even though it's wrong. But now I'm individually checking each direction. So here I need the correct angle for when I'm facing east. So when I'm facing east, my expectation is actually 0 degrees. So I should get a pass on that. When I'm facing west, my expectation is that I'm getting 180 degrees times degrees, and then I convert it into radians. So I get a pass on that. When I'm facing north, I should have a degree of 90. So I should get a pass on that. All right, getting reference angle for facing south. That should actually be 270. Oops. So I should get a pass on that. All right. State timer not giving incorrect calls for animation. All right, so my animations are based off of a state timer and a ternary operator. So, you know, as a way just to check that the math is actually returning and I'm getting what I'm expecting for either one. So if my previous state and my current state is the same, then I should be returning the state timer plus delta. So I start off state timer 0, delta is 1, so I should be getting a value of 1. Now this one is supposed to fail, so I should actually not be getting 1. So my unexpected value is 1. My actual would mean that I would need to switch this so that I would get the other counterpart, and I should be returning 0. Okay. All right. Then this is testing the other side so that it is giving the correct. So if I have different values for my previous state and my current state, then I should be returning 0. So my expected should be 0 and not 1. Okay, so that passed too. All right, now I'm calling two functions that I use really heavily just to make sure that I am using them correctly. So the math utils that libgax has does have a degree to radian function, so I just wrote out the function that I know, and I'm testing to make sure that it works. Okay, and it's failing because the equation is actually pi divided by 180 to go from degrees to radians. So that passes. Okay, and then something that I have not implemented yet, but I'm getting ready to, is a like lerping type interpolation for like the camera as it's panning to different screens. So I know that the lerp function that I was planning on using is a plus b minus a. So a is like my current position, and b is like my target position, and then like this is kind of like an alpha factor, or just a I guess you could also call it a lerping factor, but it's for to how it's panning, and as it gets closer, it should slow down. So I'm testing the mathutils lerping function to see if it's the same as the function that I'm expecting. So it's going from the 0 is my target, 100 to, or excuse me, 0 is my current position, 100 to my target, and then 10 is my factor, and I want exact. So the reason why it failed is because that is not the same. Okay, so all of them passed. This assignment, actually it was a lot easier for me the second time around. I did try to create more functional tests, I'm still kind of not sure how to implement testing, like when I have game objects and stuff like that. I did want to try to test to make sure, like if an object was destroyed, or if that call was being called correctly, or if I was getting the correct texture region. But every time I was trying to do that in this implementation of trying to do testing for it, it kept giving me null pointer exceptions, or saying that like I couldn't spy on final classes. So I understand how to do the testing. I think it's a good exercise. I do not understand how to do it in terms of games when you're dealing with a lot of game objects and things like that. Instead of just writing data structures, one of the code projects that I gave my kids that I wrote up, took me like an hour to do the code, but was for combinatorics, permutations and combinations, and that, doing the testing for that would be awesome. But for doing this, I guess unless I can see like an example of how it's done for actual games, and not where everybody just keeps showing addition and multiplication methods and then trying to show that, because a lot of that doesn't really make sense trying to implement that while you're doing a game, because you have the logic as you're doing it, unless my design is just really bad. Anyways, that's it for now. Thank you very much.